Well, I was going to start off with a question, really, and the question was this: what was your first word? For a lot of people, it's mama or papa or dada or teddy. My first word was Dalek. And this was because I grew up in the sort of early days of Doctor Who, and my elder brothers and sisters rushed around saying Dalek, Dalek. And apparently when I was about a year old, I put a hand to my head and said Dalek. And I always liked Daleks, even though they're quite scary and they exterminate and so forth. I liked Daleks. I had no problem with them, but I was terrified of Cybermen. Cybermen would send me fleeing to the sofa, and I would sort of watch them from behind the sofa. You see, Daleks couldn't go upstairs in those days. Cybermen could. Cybermen followed you around saying, delete, delete. They were fusion of man and machine. They're relentless, unfeeling, remorseless. They just go and go and go. And I thought they're a great metaphor for what I see in the world of cybercrime, and what I see as the people who are coming at us all the time and attacking us. They terrified me, so really I'm here this evening to terrify you. Some of you will have come thinking that I'm going to give you some warm words and some advice, and you'll go away thinking, oh, thank goodness for that, it's all going to be okay. No, I'm not going to do that at all. If I achieve what I want to achieve, you'll go away terrified and hide behind the sofa, and we'll figure out what we can do together to tackle this continuous growing threat of cybercrime. In this day and age, in my experience, there are two types of cyber criminals. There's the cyber fraudster, who isn't actually that technical. I mean, they know how to use computers, they're comfortable on the internet and so forth, but they're not sort of technical guys. They're cyber fraudsters. They're the people who use the web, use the world out there in order to defraud, in order to take advantage of people. And then there are the cyber geeks, and they really, really know how to use technology. And I'll talk about both of them. And in fact, I've met both of them. I've met both types. I've chatted to both types. I have a good understanding of the way they think and the sort of things they do. And I also have a good understanding that a lot of people grossly underestimate just how smart and how dedicated these guys are. This isn't a hobby for these guys. It's what they do for a living, and they work hard. This is their job. You take the cyber fraudster, for example. I'll give you an example of one that I know personally. Bit of background to him. Doesn't live in this country, lives abroad, went to a very good school, a private school, was deputy head boy by the time that he left. Went to university, studied law, went to law school, practiced as a commercial lawyer for a while, and then him and some of his friends turned their attention to cyber fraud. And they are very, very good at it, and were very, very good at it for years, and they did it for a living. They were really, really focused. They understood the law, they understood technology, they would just come after people, and also they would protect themselves as well. So in the area where they lived, they were very good at making sure that the local community liked and supported them. Apparently this chap gave out about 2,000 scholarships to people. So obviously when the police would come and arrest him, the community would say, you must be joking, you leave him alone. In fact, I remember a story, a friend of mine met this chap, had an argument with him, and wanted to get him arrested, and asked a police inspector to come to the house, and then asked this chap to come and visit him, because what he planned to do was sort of bring him in and then get the police inspector to say, this is the man, you know, away you go. So fraudster comes in, police inspector sees him and immediately leaps to his feet and says, sorry sir, I didn't know it was you. And the fraudster says, no, it's okay, sit down. So the inspector sits down, and then he says, no, stand up again. So he stands up, he says, sit down, stand up, right, now go and wait outside. And then he turns to the chap I know and said, yes, so what did you want to talk about? I mean, these guys have a lot of influence, and they are pretty well protected in the countries that they operate from, and they operate from all over the world. You can pick any country, and there'll be guys operating in that country. And they're smart as well, and they use a lot of psychology. I remember asking one of them, I said, why is it that you send out these emails with such sort of bad English in them, given that you speak perfectly good English? And the chap said to me, well, you know, what we're looking for is stupid and greedy people, not just greedy people. So anyone who answers one of those emails qualifies themselves on two counts straight away. They really do. And the amount of emails, don't underestimate the amount of spam that goes out there. It's billions a day. Billions of emails a day will go out there. People estimate 30 billion, 50 billion emails a day, and it's easy to throw around numbers like billion. You have to think about just how big a number that is. If you take a sheet of paper, this sheet of paper is probably about 0.1 of a millimeter thick, something like that. 30 billion sheets of paper that are 0.1 of a millimeter thick. If you put them next to each other, they take you from London to Wolverhampton, back to London to Wolverhampton about 20 times. That's the sort of scale that we're talking about. That's the amounts of email that are going out there. Something like 90% plus of all the email flying around the internet is spam. It is just staggeringly huge. And these guys are very, very smart in the way they use psychology. We're still talking about the non-technical type of cyber fraudster. We're talking about the guy who understands people, and one of the areas that they attack through is dating sites. What they'll do is they'll set up identities on dating sites, and they'll sort of lure people into a relationship. And it depends if you're trying to lure a man or a woman into a relationship. If you're trying to lure the woman into a relationship, then what these sorts of guys will do is they'll go and get photos from, say, a modeling site. Go and get a couple of, a few photo shots, because you can go to any modeling site and you see the model sort of standing there. This is me on the beach. This is me eating, etc. So they'll go and pick those photos off. They'll create an identity. They'll put the identity on there. In fact, at one point, we went and talked to a couple of the male models whose photos were being used over and over again on these sites. One of them was an American guy. One of them was a French guy. The French guy was really genuinely upset about it when we told him that his picture was being used to lure women into relationships, and then they were then being scammed and so forth. Oh, this is bad, this, that, and the other. The American guy, he said, hey, if the ladies are happy. But they'll create these identities, they'll put them out there. If you're going after women, then what they do is they tend to go for slightly older women, perhaps divorced, middle-aged. They'll make themselves a little bit younger, so they're not too young. They're not sort of, hey, I'm a 28-year-old. They're kind of, I'm 41, 42, widowed a few years ago. I have a 10-year-old son. Throw in a son, that always works well. Perhaps I'm doing charity work and so forth. And then you just work the relationship. Some of these guys will be managing portfolios of 20, 30 different identities on these sites, just sort of continuously building them. You get the guys who set them up and try and sort of hook someone in, and then if they get someone, they'll hand it over to a more experienced guy who will then try and build the relationship and gradually start asking for money and so forth. Men tend to be a bit easier. If you're going after a man, again, you'll go after the sort of 40 to 50-year-old. You just basically look for a picture of someone who looks rather like Beyonce and say, I like you, send me money, job done. So in fact, we interviewed a guy who was lured into one of those relationships. The lady said she was going to come over. Could he send money for the plane ticket? He sent money for the plane ticket. She sent him the details of the flight she was going to be on. He went to Heathrow with the flowers and the chocolates. He waited. Everyone came out. The hall emptied. He was the only one there with his flowers and his chocolates. And they said, no, there's no one of that name on the flight. Usually at that point, the ladies in the audience sort of say, oh, and the men say, oh, I would never have fallen for that. So he went back home and sent off a furious email. So she, whoever she was, sent an email back saying, I didn't get the money, I don't know what happened, send it again. So he sent it again. These guys are very, very smart. They don't give up. So they'll do that sort of thing. They get even smarter as well. One of the techniques that I've seen used